Well then, it's time.
Apologies. I was just trying to make it cool, 360 like. But I done messed it up. Here we are. Here we are.
Tough day.
Real tough day.
Weird day.
Very, very, very weird and tough day.
But yeah, we'll dive into that.
Yeah, I mean, as the title of the show of Damar Hamlin, Life Over a Game. I mean, I'll just go with, like, I was reading Titanic, and I look, and you've texted me. And
you're reading Titanic.
Yeah.
Is that book as long as the movie?
It feels like it.
Okay.
And by the way, multiple books.
Okay.
Like, so when the boys get their library book, it's always Titanic, and it's always like this.
All right, so you're just reading snippets of To the Boys.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Anyways.
Sorry.
So I'm doing that. Once that's over, all of a sudden, I get texts from you, from the group, and I'm just like, what the F happened?
Yeah.
You saw it live.
Yeah, I saw it live with my wife.
I'm gonna let you go through that live because I came into it obviously late to that. But why don't you talk about the live?
So, I mean, first quarter, both teams had, field goal, touchdown been scored, pass play across the middle, receiver turns up the field, defensive back tackles him, stands up over the top of him, and then literally looks like he got KO'd, like the giant falling. I mean, we've all seen the video. We're not going to play it here, but I immediately, you go into concussion, but I watched the play, and my personal immediate reaction was that this was worse than a concussion, from a standpoint of, like, he fainted or he passed out. Like, it wasn't the fetal position reactions that we saw, or even like this weekend we saw. And we may or may not show the video on that. The Colts quarterback Foles, kind of like seizing or whatever he was doing on the field, and like you could tell this was worse than that, from like a paralysis perspective of, like, there was no movement.
He's just not moving.
Yeah, and so but he stood up. Like my eyes said, oh, and this was normal football play. And as people have watched, and you can agree or disagree whether to keep showing the video, and it's more so like there's nothing that's in the video that's really hard to see other than
it's because
what it led to,
yes,
type of thing. So it's more out of respect from that perspective. But my wife is watching, and she's like, "Oh, what happened?" And I'm like, I don't know. And so, like, we go back and rewatch it. They've gone to commercial the first time at this point, and I'm like, he got hit in the chest, unless as he fell back, like, he hit his head, and you couldn't really see it in the first shot. You're like, okay, maybe
that was it.
But like, or initial, like, shock absorption of the tackle.
Yeah.
But I mean, guy's running sideways and then turns up the field. Like, he doesn't have, it's not like he's up top speed.
Right.
There's no shoulder pad into the, it's nothing crazy. And then it's just like, wow, okay. And as soon as they came back the second time from commercial, the two things, one, obviously the ambulance is on the field at that point, but two, like, players' reactions. Fortunately or unfortunately, however you want to look at it, we've both been on the field when bad things have happened to people. And we both had injuries. I have personally been taken off the field in an ambulance before. Obviously my situation wasn't as dire, but at the time, I mean, I had shoulder pads cut off of me, a helmet cut off of me when I was in 8th grade. They thought I was bleeding out of my ears. Thankfully I wasn't. But I mean, I've been the person laying on the ground, knocked out, concussed, and ambulance off the field. I've also been the player at practice who has seen guys break legs, unfortunately. I've seen concussions. So, like, we've seen it. We've been in person. So, like, the feeling where the color drains from your face, your heart sinks completely, and there's no way to hide that emotion. And specifically Josh Allen, I think as much as anyone, and obviously he's a superstar, so that was where focus was. you knew something was worse than concussion, broken leg, ACL, whatever it was. Now, obviously, we saw that too, that he fainted, but like, so now you know where I'm like, that's when the text went out, was like, I think this guy is dying or dead on the field.
And he technically was.
You know, obviously, like, trying not to cause a panic with the text that I'm sending. But, you know, I had a couple of people that I sent it to and was just like, you know, you weren't watching at the time, so I didn't get it. And I got maybe a 5-minute reaction from my other buddy that I had texted, and I was just like, okay, so like I'm just kind of having back, and she's like, well, how does something like that happen, my wife? And I'm like, I mean, I don't know. Right. And like on the, you know, where you're not getting anything from the television,
not at that point, right?
Other than information that, you know, whether you agree or disagree with how it was handled, or if they should keep going back to the shot, or if they should keep going back to the studio, like all of that stuff is honestly, like, does it really matter? No, that's what these people are paid for. And unfortunately they were put in a position that they probably weren't prepared for. And I think overall the situation was probably handled about as good as it could have been.
From the television standpoint, yes, not by the NFL. We'll definitely hit upon
which, you know, a lot of it's going to be he said, she said, how it's handled by the NFL. The NFL just needs to have a better protocol in place. The thing that's tough with that is the NFL sees concussions every week. This looked and felt a lot like a concussion. As soon as it became more than that, you know, whether it be a paralysis, a death, or anything like that, it's hard to see that and impossible to see that and play at any type of level or focus at any type of level where you're not putting yourself and everyone else on that field in danger by going back out there.
There would have 100% been more injuries. There's been no way around it.
And I mean, and even if there wasn't, it's not fair.
No.
It's not fair to
anybody.
Damar, and it's not fair to any of the players, not fair to any of the coaches, any of the fans. And you feel terrible first and foremost for Damar, for his family, who they're trying to get his mom out of the crowd to get to the ambulance. I feel a certain way about that, and that I hope that he was stable enough that those seconds didn't matter, because his mom, we could have got his mom to the hospital in a different way. Now that's
right.
Personal, like
I read it as it was a good thing.
The gesture was fine.
Well, I read it as he was stable, therefore they could wait. I'm really hoping that I'm not going to speculate on that. But like I'm gonna assume he was good to go, relatively speaking, so his mom could join.
Right, and that's what I hope for. And like from that perspective, I'm glad that they searched her out.
Yeah,
to find her, because like they showed, you know, video pregame. I mean, he's obviously very close with his family. Family was down on the field, so all of that. And there's nothing worse than not knowing it. I mean, specifically as a family member, I mean, we all want to know, but I mean, honestly, you know, we don't know the guy, so our day-to-day is not going to be affected like, you know, his family's is. So like that was good to see that thought process came about, and that they were able to get her there so she could be with her son. So but yeah, that was the initial reaction to everything, you know. And then at that point, I think about 2 or 3 more commercials in, I had seen what I'd heard enough.
Right.
Actually, probably before that, but finally we turned away and watched the show. I think my wife was a little bit more intrigued, at least initially, with like what was going to happen with the game and stuff like that. And honestly, I was like, if they do play the game, I don't want to watch. And it didn't do me any good to hear from other players, and because like I know that I've been there, and so they weren't offering me on a personal level any more insight to the feeling or the sincerity I should feel, or how they shouldn't be playing the game. You know, and there's a lot of talk on Twitter and stuff like that. I specifically was checking back there more so just to see if there were any updates on him, which, slowly stuff leaked in through the night. But I mean, besides that, all of the back and forth about different people's takes and everything like that, honestly, I could really care less. Journalistic timing is really everything. So the stuff that was criticized because of when it came out, not really what came out, in my opinion. And then, everybody's got their opinion on how they feel about certain things on that. And that's why it's social media. Ultimately, the great thing that came out of it was over, getting close now to $5 million raised to Damar Hamlin's charity, which goes for gifts to kids in very tough neighborhoods. So
they're
great news on that.
And they're expanding more on that. His probably one of his best friends, but his marketing guy who I watched his interview on Pat McAfee's show 12:30, something like that, came out and said, I don't have any updates. What you have is what you have. The family, that's a family, up to the family to do that. That's not my job. But my job was I needed to find the password to that GoFundMe because that GoFundMe was from 2020. And he's like, I was afraid at that point, $3.5 million, we wouldn't have access to. He has access to it now. They've updated the description. Yes, it was originally for toys. Now it's going to expand to camps and just really all of the things that Damar wanted to do, just didn't have the resources.
You do have to realize that
camps and all those are coming into play.
This GoFundMe was originally set up with a $2,500 goal, like you said, back in 2020. It hadn't reached its goal.
No.
So this thing had not taken off
at all
in any.
Nope.
I mean, especially for a guy that, even as a young guy, I mean, he's still making probably a couple $1 million. I don't know how much he's making a year, but like definitely a guy that would have enough to. He funded the GoFundMe on his own. Let's put it that way.
Yeah.
So
and just didn't take the page down, and just left it.
And
like
he was still
did
doing it. Like we've seen in all the reports and stuff like that. A guy that's very involved with his community and has continued to be. So this GoFundMe was something he started when he got drafted, and
it would take off.
Yeah, it never did, and now it got.
Now
rebooted.
It's probably well over 5, I would assume. We haven't checked it. It will be in our description for this. We've posted it. We'll continuously do that to support him and what he wants to do, regardless of what his outcome is, football-wise. Now I've spoken to a couple doctors, Sean Slavin, a surgeon. He's the one who alerted our group to what the what it was. And here I'm going to look it up because I'm not a doctor. So I'm not going to be able to say this word very well. But commotio cordis?
Commotio cordis. That's what they're, I mean, I saw that listed. I mean, it's all relative to, you don't know if he has anything pre-existing. You don't know. I mean, you just don't know anybody. So as far as the commotio cordis that you referred to is basically when you have a hard hit to the chest is where your heart beats off your rib cage, for lack of a better term, or your spine, because of a hit. And there was a hockey player, and I just saw this at some point.
Yeah, I did it too. 25
years ago that had a puck hit him in the chest. I think they showed like guys getting hit with a baseball or anything like that.
Baseball happens.
This can happen too. So that's, just based on what people are seeing, kind of what people are thinking happened. Tough to know. And ultimately, like I say, we're not doctors. They're not. And ultimately it doesn't matter.
No.
Ultimately the guy almost died on the field.
He almost died. Clearly it's a freak accident. Is a very rare occurrence. Clearly, or else there would be a lot more happening. This is the first time in, I guess, modern day football we can say in the NFL that it's happened. Now it's happened in high school level. It's usually in younger male athletes that this type of thing occurs. So really it doesn't matter what it is or how. It's a fact that it happened. He had 9 minutes of CPR, which is
crazy,
a long ass time. He was probably what everyone's saying in the second safest place for this to happen.
Yeah, besides the hospital.
Besides the hospital, because of all the doctors and all of the things that they have.
Basically, they had because they had to shock him.
Yeah.
And so ultimately, from a response time standpoint, there's one other place besides literally laying in the hospital
that you would get that treatment.
You would get that response time.
Right. Correct.
And that's the biggest thing in those moments, whether it's heart attack, stroke, anything like those, is response time.
Response time.
And that's kind of why I brought that up with the whole mom down to the ambulance thing, is that you hope that everything, again,
who knows? We're not
can only assume.
And
if you're waiting for a relative, at that point, there's some stability, and having a loved one there is definitely the greatest thing you can have.
Correct.
If you're stable.
Correct.
Obviously in critical condition. But if they had him, in a position where everything was good, to get his mom in there was great. So,
and let's, the importance of, like you said, family, time, speed of recovery and everything, getting there. I want to hit upon, like, as the team and, the speculation of NFL delaying the game, not delaying the game, saying you got 5 minutes to get ready, both teams saying F off, those types of things. The emotional standpoint when you look at Josh Allen, is in Diggs crying and all of that. The one that we and I want to make sure everyone knows and it hits upon and supports as much as everyone else, probably a step below Damar, but the closest to it is T. Higgins. To be the player that caused, quote, quote, caused, like, I don't know. He was the one who hit him in the chest. We'll put it that way.
Right.
To be that player, no one could imagine what that feels like. It's got to be closest to killing someone without accidentally killing someone. Like, that would be the only one, how you guys can relate to that. I can't relate to that.
Right.
But I know he broke down and has tried, showed up to the hospital. I couldn't imagine being the one to put someone else in that situation.
Yeah. See, and I struggle with this, and here's the reason I struggle with it, because I watched Kayvon Thibodeau knock a quarterback into convulsions, do a snow angel on the field, and then do the put you to sleep signal on the sideline this weekend. So T. Higgins that's a complete accident. I mean, he's getting tackled.
Correct.
He's not going after anyone. And I understand from that perspective that he's going to feel bad, but I just don't know, unless you're T. Higgins, and you're not going to know, but I don't know that I would feel, remorse, or, like, each individual is going to have a different reaction to that. Yeah. And I think people have reached out, and everything that I saw was, absolutely not your fault, da-da-da-da-da.
Correct.
But we don't do that. My overall issue is, like, we don't do that to the guy who knocked the guy out. Like, who hit Tua and concussed him. Right. We have no idea.
Right.
Did that guy feel any remorse? Or was he doing his job?
Good point.
And again, this is different because it come to a heart attack. We had a guy on the field we thought was dead. Yes. And technically was dead. Was dead. And was brought back. So, a life was saved on the field. You go back to Ryan Shazier when he got paralyzed on the field, and who he hit, and a lot of people will be like, well, he led with his head, so it was his own fault, or, and it's like, no, like, we're playing football here, and, like, nothing is anybody's fault. Like, everybody knows what they signed up for, and every NFL guy to a man, every college football player to a man, every high school football player
to a degree.
But I mean, once you get to a high school level, you've been in enough football.
Your parents know, everyone knows.
Right. You know what you're signing up for. And the guys that are making the most money
really know,
which are these NFL level guys who know it's an entertainment and a game.
In a game.
And life over a game. Again, last night we got it right. But, like, at what point do we start, does the blame thing, and that those types of feelings start to be more, is the light going to shine on that more when it's not necessarily life or death on the field? Like, when is the NFL actually going to start caring about player safety? And can you? Like, can you have this game and have player safety, or is it just an oxymoron?
That's tough. I think to a degree, you can have them both. Overall, it's an oxymoron. It's like war. And I'm not going to put us.
Gladiator thing is the thing that I've heard the most, just because the war thing is. I mean, I understand what they're trying to, but that's our entertainment. That's the 100,000 people in the stands. We've got two teams on the field. Like,
it's what it is.
Yeah.
At the end of the day,
like, people are expecting people to hit people hard. If somebody gets hurt, it's really not. I mean, people go to hockey games to see people fight.
Fights.
Like, everybody's.
I am one of them.
Right. I mean,
guilty.
Yes. Who doesn't like to see a big hit? Who doesn't like to see the hockey guys fight? Everybody wants the big play. There's repercussions for that. And I think last night, maybe for 3 hours, 5 hours, whatever, up until the next game's played, shows a little bit of light to that. They're like, hey, it is a game. People can die. It's more than people getting hurt.
They can die.
And the concussion thing has led to a lot of conversations. And when it's not a concussion, I feel like people forgot how to react. Just because it's concussion. We've got the roughing the passer thing where we're laying guys down. We've got, but then we still have all of these guys getting concussions anyway, and it's just like, okay, obviously that isn't helping.
Correct.
Or is it, or would it be way worse? No way to know.
No way to know.
But that's the ultimate discussion, is that, when these guys enter the arena, their entertainment, what their profession is, what they're getting paid for, they're putting themselves, their lives, their bodies on the line.
Absolutely. Both now and in the future.
Right.
We know this.
Like, when you go to work, you don't expect to get hit in the head, break a leg,
correct,
have someone hit you hard enough that it can cause some type of heart issue. But when they do, when they go to work, it's a hazard of the job.
Yeah.
There is a reason they get paid millions to hundreds of millions of dollars. If that is my hazard pay, then
so be it.
Right.
So
But
be it.
you also have to be sensitive within that to understand that these are still human beings.
Correct.
And that when we get to that line, that we understand. And that's why I said earlier, I mentioned journalistic timing on a lot of the reactions. And it's like all things can be discussed in a correct way and an incorrect way. And everybody has a different view on it. However, last night, at the time that guy's laying on the field, is not the time to discuss anything but whether or not that life is going to be preserved.
Yes.
And so I have as big a trouble with the people who are responding to the people they didn't like, just because at that point you've lost focus on what's important as well. And so just the whole snowballing of, social media and everything like that is errant in the first place.
Yeah.
Just because as soon as one person gets it off track, now everyone who is responding to that person is also off track.
And
you're not any better than
correct.
that guy now, in my opinion. And so that's where my issues lie with all of those things.
Yeah.
Knowing that we're going to go into today, we're going to discuss it. It's going to be the number one topic in all of news, radio, sports radio, podcasts, you name it. It's going to be what's talked about. You've got people not doing specific items today that they would as far as content goes, basically in condolences for
right.
All of these things that are going on. But at some point, Thursday's going to hit. I don't know if Saturday's going to hit, and we're going to have another football game.
And it'll be
Wednesday's
all
going to hit for those guys, and they're going to go back to practice.
Right.
And yes, that's going to be thought about. But I saw a tweet that was, I believe it was Ryan Clark, was the next step or the next snap on the football field is going to be the scariest one. And like, I don't know. I didn't know how I felt about it. Like, I understand what he's saying as far as there's going to be a huge exhale when that is done. Just because of the last one, you know, it wasn't necessarily anything, you know, it wasn't anything people don't do on a rugby field with no pads and no helmets.
Yeah.
You know, he hugged a guy, tackled him, and this is what we were left with.
Literally a timing issue. That's
but like, it goes back to my football thought is that like, no, these guys, like when you go back out there, first of all, know that you're going back onto a football field. And if you're not ready to do that, then don't. And are most of the guys going to be ready? I think they are. But if you're not, then don't.
Yeah.
And don't feel like you're going to get judged for it. Don't, like whatever it is, like if you are in that mindset, then don't go on the football field is what my reaction was to the tweet that I saw. And I don't know how I felt about that. Like
he's right and wrong at the same time. He is right for literally everyone watching.
Right.
Because I'm not going to practice on Wednesday.
Right.
Wednesday for those guys, that first hit.
And then
some of them
hit very much in practice.
It's just going to be, it's not even going to be a hit.
No, but it's just stepping back on a field.
Is going to be awkward at first.
Right.
Mainly for the Bills and the Bengals. I think
100%.
the other teams, it'll be weird at first. They're going to say something like guarantee in team meetings. Mm-hmm. But those two teams for sure, that first practice back is going to be, it's going to take a few minutes to get into it.
Right.
Once they get into it, they're fine. They'll be locked in from Wednesday, half of Wednesday or whatever you want to call it, on by kickoff Saturday. Not one player on the field, it will not register. And if it does, they're not playing. But it won't register then. It is game time, locked in. We know what we're doing. For fans,
it's got to be that way.
It has to be that way.
Let's be very clear about that. If it's not, like you said, they need to remove themselves.
Yes. And I think coaches will be very cognizant of it,
right?
Because that's a terrible situation. Mm-hmm. From Ryan Clark's tweet for fans, I do agree. They're not going to see a hit until the first game. Mm-hmm. They're all going to go,
all right.
Yeah.
Right.
And guess what? There might be someone get hurt on that first play, and we might not even see it.
Right.
And that's okay. And once that's over, we'll be back to relative normal. Right. So I think you got to look at it as a player one way. You got to look at it as a fan the other. The fans will do that. Players, Wednesday it'll be their time to lock in. We as players have always done that. Ours wasn't Wednesday. Would have been nice.
Right.
It was Tuesday for us.
Right.
Tuesday, locked in, good to go. Whatever happened, whoever's hurt, you got to get back on the field and do your job.
Right.
And that's what will happen Wednesday, and we'll move forward, which is great. We do need to move forward. We're all here for Damar. When he comes back, all the support. If he retires, doesn't matter.
Right.
The support is there for all players, current players, young players, older players, former players, fans. Just recognize the moment and recognize how important just life is.
Yeah, just how fragile it is.
It's very fragile.
I mean, that's ultimately what it comes down to. I mean, for me, that's a big thing that I took out of it.
Yeah.
Was just the fragility of life, and just seeing it on a national stage where millions, hundreds of millions, maybe. Right. At this point,
right.
Hundreds of millions of people have seen that.
Come to playoffs. Oh, yeah, by now,
because
absolutely.
Of social media. Hundreds of millions of people watched someone die on a football field and get resuscitated in some way.
Correct.
Because we know that they had to resuscitate him. Like, that is what happened. Like, that's just a fact. And you don't see that every day. If you or I or someone we know at our workplace died of a heart attack, sorry, it's just not the same effect. Like, this just gives you a reality TV look at the fragility of life, and I think that goes a long way, and it sticks with people.
It does.
So the positives you can get out of that are, hey, do take a chance to take a deep breath, look around, appreciate what you have in front of you. Do take a look at how the charity of millions of people has been able to. So take the positives from it. We know what the possible impacts of football are, and if you hate football and would never let your kid play football, this is not going to change that. And from the other side, if you saw what happened, it wasn't something that would have been out of the ordinary, that we haven't seen, specifically us, thousands of times on a football field. And for whatever reason, this time he didn't get to stand up, and hopefully he does this week, whenever it is. And that's ultimately all we can hope for. So that's just kind of a long-winded view, though, of what's happened over the last, basically 22 hours.
Right. Absolutely. Could not have said it better. Everyone, we went through something together. Mm-hmm. Ultimately, the world at this point, I don't know how many people it reached, but every one of those went through an event with trauma all together. Mm-hmm. We just physically didn't get hurt, but his mom saw the same thing we did. Everyone did this together. And the thing is, you got to recognize that, look around, realize those that are closest to you, and really move forward with good support, both for Damar, his family, and all those others that are in need. Mm-hmm. This is a time to reflect on that. And
it's beginning of the year,
yes.
Which I think there's a lot of reflection just in general, as a population. New Year's resolutions, obviously a big thing. Holidays, everything like that. People are having their own impact from all of those items coming together. And then this is your first Monday Night Football game after
all that
Christmas, Thanksgiving, Christmas, New Year's. So like 2 months of reflection, basically, new start,
Bam.
And so then you hit this with all of those emotions already running a little bit high, and in the biggest NFL game of the year up to this point, just as far as what was on the line and stuff like that, and boom. And so in a lot of ways, like, it's just it's a realization, it's an aha moment for a lot of people. I think they can be, let's take this and build off of it in any way that we can.
Absolutely.
Well then, it's time.